Hi everyone. So intervals are one of the most important things for a trained musician to be good at. And what intervals are it's a measurement of the space between two notes. And when we talk about intervals, it's important to be both very accurate at measuring intervals, both by sight and by ear, and also really fast. Intervals are one of the basic building blocks of music, and you have to be so good at intervals that you can identify them instantaneously. So I'm going to show you some tricks and some methods to help you identify intervals quickly. So when we talk about intervals, there are two parts to all of these intervals. There is a quality, so P stands for perfect, MA stands for major. There are also minor, augmented, and diminished intervals. And then there's a number. So we have 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8. We usually call this a unison, this an octave, and then everything else in between is second, third, fourth, fifth, sixth, and seventh. So the number part of an interval is very straightforward. The number part of an interval just involves counting the lines and spaces between two notes, and you start at 1, because there's no such thing as a zeroth. So if we zoom in here, uh, this is a fifth because you can count 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. That's a fifth. This is a third, 1, 2, 3. And no matter where the dots are on the page, where the notes are, every number is just counting the distance between the two notes starting at 1. 1, 2, 3. This is a third. This is a sixth. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. The number part of an interval is not affected by sharps, flats, accidentals, key signatures. The number part of an interval is always just counting. So these two intervals, they're both fifths, even though they contain different notes. This is C and G. It's a fifth. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. This is C and G flat. It sounds much different than C and G. However, it's still 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. And no matter what craziness I do to this fifth, it's always a fifth because the number part of an interval is just about counting lines and spaces. Now, the quality part of an interval helps us be more precise. C to G sounds much different than C to G flat. And so the quality part of an interval helps us differentiate between those two sounds. So the best way to get started with figuring out quality is by memorizing a small set of intervals and then understanding the difference between similar intervals. So here I have the intervals in a C major scale. I could actually do any major scale and it would have a similar set of intervals. C to C is a perfect unison. C to D is a major third, C to D is a major second, C to E is a major third, perfect fourth, and so on. And then we can take these intervals and we can measure other intervals against them. The interval box is essential in understanding this. So the interval box is a diagram that helps us visualize similar intervals. Now, the way this is laid out is in the interval box. The left side of the interval box pertains to seconds, thirds, sixths, and sevenths. Those types of intervals can only be major, minor, augmented, or diminished. You can never have a perfect second, third, sixth, or seventh. And then the right side of the chart only pertains to unisons, fourths, fifths, and octaves. You can never have a major or minor unison, fourth, fifth, or octave. You can only move up or down this chart. And as you move down this chart, intervals get closer together. And as you move up this chart, intervals get further apart. So let's play with this a little bit by comparing something we don't know against something we do. So for example, just a few minutes ago, I had an interval here, C and G flat. Now we know it's a fifth, but we don't know what type of fifth it is yet. So if we compare C and G to C and G flat, that's where things start to get possible. So we already know, based on this, that C to G is a perfect fifth. So here, C is the bottom note, G is the top note. And if we compare that to C and G flat, we would take the top note and lower it. And here, these two notes are a half step closer together. C to G is a perfect fifth. C to G flat is a half step closer together. So that means C to G flat is a diminished fifth. Let's look at a different example. Let's take a look at let's do C and A sharp. So we already know that C up to, excuse me, C up to A is a major sixth. So it's a certain number of half steps. I actually don't really even care how many it is. I just know it's a major sixth because I've memorized the intervals in a C major scale. So C to A is a major sixth. C to A sharp is a half step further apart. So that means instead of being a major sixth, C to A sharp is an augmented sixth. So really the best way to get good at intervals is by memorizing a small set of intervals, and then you can always compare what you don't know to what you have memorized. Let's do one more as an example. So let's look at, give me a second here. So let's look at C and B versus C sharp and B. So one of the things I want you to memorize is C to B is a major seventh. And then what we're changing about this interval is we're taking the bottom note and we're raising it. So this interval is a half step closer together than C to B. So C to B is major. The two notes get closer together. That means C sharp to B is a minor seventh. And that's how we're going to deal with intervals at first. Over the course of the next couple of classes and the next couple of weeks, I'm going to give you many tools like this to think about intervals. All right, that's it. Thank you. Bye.